Today I fact up by losing every dollar I saved in one day. Hey everyone, didn't think I'd post this here, but if anyone wants to know how to lose all their savings in one day, read on. I am 27 years old, my name is Richard, I live in California, and I have always dreamed of financial freedom. A few months ago, I became actively interested in investments. Oh, how sure I was that this was my future. Researching the markets, reading articles, watching YouTube videos on investing for beginners, I was ready to take the risk. So the day came when I came across an idea that seemed sure to work. It was a win-win investment, or so it seemed to me. One of my acquaintances, quite an experienced trader, told about a promising asset in which he himself invested a lot of money. He claimed that he believed in this project 100%, and I, seeing the brilliance of his success, believed in myself. I threw all the savings I had, almost $30,000, into this asset. I decided it was time to go all in and do something big. Well, to be honest, it all started to go downhill from there. Everything looked great in the beginning. Imagine, I invested money and saw my portfolio grow rapidly within the first few hours. The numbers just kept going up and I felt like a genius. All these dreams began to appear in my head. A new car, travel, I even thought about buying an apartment. It seemed that I had finally found a way to make money without hard work. Easy money. Could anything be better? In the meantime, I began to monitor the market almost every minute, until I noticed an alarming signal. Towards noon, the price of my asset began to drop little by little. At first, I was not worried because I already knew that markets often fluctuate, so I decided to just wait. But hour after hour, the fall continued. An experienced friend of mine assured me that this is a normal market reaction and that big profits always require patience. However, in my heart, I started to get nervous. I tried not to panic, telling myself to think like an investor, but every time I refreshed my holdings page, the charts kept getting redder. It seemed that everyone around me knew something, and I did not. But at that moment, I decided not to stop and even thought, it's just a fall before a jump, as everyone says. By mid-afternoon, the situation began to turn into a real nightmare. The price of the asset I invested in had already fallen by almost 20%. I sat at the laptop, constantly updating the charts, but each update only worsened my mood. Panic began to set in. This was not what I had planned, and certainly not what my acquaintance told me about. Then I started checking every possible news channel, trader chats, Reddit, Twitter, literally every place where there could be any information. People who were praising this asset yesterday were panicking today. Comments in the style of, "Sell while there's still a chance," made me feel that the situation was more serious than I thought. But I still held on to my investment like a lifeline. I convinced myself that selling now would be the biggest mistake. Meanwhile, the friend who recommended this asset to me disappeared somewhere. I started chatting with him, trying to get some advice, but he ignored all the messages. This added even more anxiety. If he himself is not responding, perhaps he is also panicking or has already sold his assets. In the evening, the situation became truly dire. My portfolio was already almost half of what it had been this morning, and the decline continued. I was sitting in front of the screen, and every few minutes my glance at the graph felt like a knife stab. Even in the morning, I imagined how this money would help me realize my dream. But now, everything looked like a nightmare from which there was no way to wake up. You freelancer Phil, my knowledge of the Ford Raptor, a majestic pickup truck, which I marveled at as a symbol of freedom. I was dying that I would drive it into nature and increase in price. Having bought it, and in the first month everything looked like a Cossack. It quickly became clear that it's even more important to find a place to park, and a daily exit costs less than a regular passenger car with such a lot of tires, literally poor tires, replacing them almost immediately. Irie months, and it cost more than 2 months to rent an apartment. Before that, there's insurance. Now I really want to live closer to nature so that I can make it right. You classic cruiser Carl. I've been dreaming about a real classic car. I'm looking for a 1969 Chevy Camaro, and after the troubles of work and savings, I decided to buy this beauty at an auction. What happened next? I'm starting to get tired of the first months. Everything that is possible is okay. Carburetor, radiator, door locks, original parts. Plus, not a single auto mechanic in my area is competent in repairing classic cars, so I'm looking for someone specialized and paying for the same price. I spent more on repairs than on the purchase itself, and I realized that I don't have enough pennies to encourage this fast horse. Selling the Camaro with tears in my eyes. You luxury lawyer. 82. I am a lawyer, and I want a car that would reinforce my status. I believe that the Mercedes-Benz S-Class is exactly what I need. Come first, insurance, then maintenance, and then problems with electronics. This car is full of technology, and a skin malfunction meant dozens of years of diagnostics, as it was a simple breakdown. What is my status now? Because I spend most of my time on cars, having turned it back, and now I'm going to the first place in the world. I don't want it to rip me off. You, Racing Reggie. Having bought a Subaru WRX, I have always loved rallies. I realized how I drive on gravel roads and feel the light at the current stage of the championship. The reality was different. First, gasoline. This is a beast car, Yogo fades like a relish, and I'm no longer talking about the versatility of sports tires. Then, having started to wear out the suspension through my races on cross-country terrain, after breaking the gearbox, I realized that this car is too expensive. Satisfaction for the amateur. Turning to a civilian car and leaving the Raleigh for simulators, you on Sunshine Sarah. I worked in a company where half of my colleagues drove a Range Rover, and I wanted one myself. I knew that it looked very new. I rode happily for the first few months until it was time to go through an MOT. It turned out that I would need some parts to replace it, and the prices for them were just crazy. Then I went to the dealership to replace the shock absorbers. It's a Range Rover, but if it came to new problems with the engine, I just got angry. From this luxury, I turned to my old Corolla, and I don't marvel at the Range Rover anymore. You mountain climber Mike. As a mountain tourist, I've always been dying about the Jeep Wrangler. I want to see the wine in my mind on any road. But the prices for spare parts, transmission repairs, spending on the bedroom, I can't help believe that cars are dead. It would cost me quite a lot. For the first few months, I felt like I was the rightful king of the road. But when the winter season started and I needed new tires, I realized that I didn't have. It covers the budget for the basic maintenance of your car. It ended up that I sold it and added a huge crossover. You Italian lover, Leo. I bought Italian classic cars and bought an old Alfa Romeo Spider. The car looked hopeless, but it turned out that repairs and support would be worth investing in the hobby. Most of the time it was parked garages, looking for spare parts or worm diagnostics. One repair of the electronics cost several $1,000s, and replacing the engine is even twice as expensive. Ready to invest wealth for a new purpose. Now I drive a reliable family car, and I lost the Spider from the past. Utah City Slicker. Dan, I live near a great place, but I thought that I wanted a car for trips to nature, like a Land Cruiser. I thought that I would often go up in price, but through work I couldn't get more than a few times to the river. Tim showed up in an hour. That the support of this car at the site is a real disaster. The car drains gasoline so quickly that I have to wait to refuel it, and the parking lot is charged as a fine for oversized transport. Duvati Pozashliakovic for going once to the river, but you will spend a lot of money on the water for such a car in the area. I once again tried to contact that acquaintance, and again silence. I began to suspect that maybe I was just being used, but I still couldn't bring myself to fully realize it. I wanted to believe that it was just a bad coincidence that would pass. But every minute, every red number on the screen indicated that this was no accident. You know, in such situations, time begins to drag somehow differently. All the sounds around disappear, and only you and this screen remain, which seems to absorb you completely. I once again weighed all the options: sell now and return at least some crumbs, or wait, believing in a miracle. But then it dawned on me. There is no point in waiting. All the news was saying the same thing. The asset is just being merged, and that seems to be the end. Realizing that it was game over, I finally tried to hit the sell button. But here's what it turned out. The platform where I kept my investments just froze. Panic selling overwhelmed the system, and now no one could sell or buy. It was a moment of absolute helplessness. I sat staring at the screen, which still showed my total, Much less than this morning, but still something. And at the same time, I couldn't do anything to save at least these remains. The site continued to hang, and it seemed that I hanged along with it. Every time I tried to refresh the page, it just reloaded and the screen said, "System overload. Please try again later." Later. But if I had known what was going to happen next, I would have just given that money to someone else, just to not lose it all in one moment. But I sat, waiting, hoping that at least something could be returned. Finally, after a few hours, the site came back to life, and I was able to log into my account again. But what I saw on the screen literally broke me. My account was almost empty. The $30,000 I had saved up over the years is now almost completely gone. After all the commissions and trying to save at least something, only a few $100s remained. It was like a slap in the face, and all that was left was to watch it in silence. There was one question in my head. How could I be so naive? How did I allow myself to believe in the promises of easy money? I barely slept that night. Thoughts kept spinning in my head. What now? What will I tell my family, friends? How will I return this money? The feelings of shame and despair were overwhelming. I felt like a failure. After all these videos and articles about successful investing, I believed that it was easier than it really is. And now I asked myself one question. Why wasn't I more careful? I remembered all those moments when intuition screamed to stop, when the first losses already hinted at danger, but I chose to ignore. Then it seemed to me that it was just newbie's fear. Now, looking at the empty account, I understood that it was not fear, but the voice of common sense, which I rejected in pursuit of quick earnings. In the morning, I was finally able to get in touch with the acquaintance who advised me on this investment. His response was almost unbelievable. "Oh, sorry, brother, I lost everything too. It was a risk, you knew." It drove me crazy. I knew it was a risk, but I didn't expect that the whole thing was not as reliable as he described it. It turns out that he was risking other people's money, as well as his own, and it had to end either in a win or in such a catastrophic loss. I was left alone with my thoughts. The fact is that the lost money was not just accumulation, but the result of many years of work, refusal of unnecessary expenses, every dollar saved. They were supposed to be an investment in the future. The sense of stability I so longed for, and now they disappeared in one moment, in just a few hours.
This experience taught me an important truth. There is no quick way to get rich, at least not without enormous risk. And even if the risk is justified, the ability to stop in time and understand, when your game becomes dangerous, weighs much more than the knowledge of promising assets. Now I know that real success in investing is not a one-time profit, but the ability to preserve capital and move forward without succumbing to temptations and emotions. So, if you ever see a crazy profitable investment, or hear about a guaranteed win, remember my story. Listen to reason, not to passion, because lost money is not just numbers on the account. It's time, it's plans, it's effort that can't be returned. I came to this truth too late, but now I know it was a lesson that I hope will help me move more cautiously and achieve real success. Sometimes the best thing we can do is learn from our mistakes and find the strength to start over.